Kia ora, hello, thank you for joining us. I'm Philip Duncan. Well, the weather forecast is settling down a wee bit around New Zealand, but as we're going towards the weekend, it gets stormy, and the southeastern side of Australia is also impacted by this incoming change, starting over here around Western Australia, but it's going to deepen as it moves through over the coming days. The low to the north of New Zealand didn't do very much, delivered some rain to the north, very, very good news, but being a squash zone, usually the winds aren't too bad, and while there were severe gales out near the centre of the low, the centre stayed offshore. So it wasn't as windy last night in northern areas as it could have been. If it had moved another 100 kilometres closer, we would have been seeing, I think, a few trees down here and there, but it just stayed offshore. So now the windy weather just brushes East Cape, pretty much Hawke's Bay northwards. You'll get that southerly coming through today. But for those in the north, the sun's coming back out through the high cloud after a very gloomy past couple of days, and surprisingly cold as well with the humidity. We had someone who was down in Tekapo for a week. Hello, Andy, if you're watching us. And he said that it was colder when he got back to Auckland yesterday with the 10 degrees and the cloudy weather because the humidity's in there, the moisture, whereas if you're down through the mountains of the South Island, not very much humidity usually, and the air is quite dry, even though very cold. This morning, -4s and -5s right across Otago and Canterbury, so certainly frosty, and that happens again tonight. Speaking of frosts, we got these great photos sent in from Arthur's Pass. Thank you, Jacob, sent in to us on Twitter showing the mountains. I'm actually standing in front of them. You can see the mountains just here in the background. An absolutely beautiful photo taken from Arthur's Pass, and also this one as well in the same area. So thank you very much, Jacob. Hope you're staying warm down there. It was about -4 or -5 through Arthur's Pass this morning. All right, let's get into the rain forecast because there's a lot of rain on the way for New Zealand on the western side. This area here in blue and these darker shadings are actually taking you right up to 300 millimetres. And that's only for 3 days, or 4 days, I should say, starting from Wednesday. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That's a lot of rain coming in here if it gets up to 300 millimetres. And unlike other rain events, this one's more up the west coast in the populated areas, Greymouth, Westport, Hokitika, all caught up in that heavy rain, whereas down here in Fiordland, much lower rainfall totals. So the bulk of the rain coming in here to the upper side of the west coast, that means flooding and slips and road closures are all possible later on this week over on the west coast. Okay, getting into the forecast now. So as we get into Wednesday, there's not really a lot going on. High pressure up here around Norfolk Island. That will be stretching down over much of New Zealand. But in the South Island, that nor'wester is developing. So as early as Wednesday, you've got that windier weather starting to push through the valleys. That means the overnight lows will start to go up. Still a chance of frost though on Wednesday morning, but not as heavy and not as widespread. By the way, check out the growing low over here around Australia. As we go to Thursday, that stormy system here gets bigger. Perth, you've got gale force sou'westers, or at least blustery southwesterlies, and a colder change just south of Perth. Adelaide's got nor'westers, so does Melbourne, so does Sydney and Hobart. All those nor'westers are pushing in towards New Zealand as well. So on Thursday, there's the beginning of that heavy rain and those northwesterlies coming straight in like that. By the time we get to Friday, the rain continues over on the west coast with those heavy falls coming through. But look at all the isobars. This is a really big system. It's not very often you see the westerlies carving out a big chunk of Australia and New Zealand at the same time. So this is quite a big system parked right here, going around it all. So windy weather all the way from the Great Australian Bight across Aussie, Tasmania and into New Zealand with severe gales possible on Friday in New Zealand. And then we go into the weekend and it's wet and windy on Saturday in the North Island. Heavy falls on the west coast, especially Taranaki Central Plateau area. And then you've got those windy nor'westers. They could be gusting over 130 kilometres an hour up in the hills and over 100 k's an hour lower down. So definitely some wind warnings, I would imagine, on the way. And stormy sou'westers over here in Australia. So you've got the sou'west coming up that side, westerlies in the Tasman, and northwesterlies coming down over the North Island, although much calmer in the South Island. But notice that rain, it is still falling in that upper corner of the South Island. So that's why we're expecting potentially 300 millimetres over the next 4 days, starting from Wednesday. And our final map is for Sunday, and it doesn't show a great deal of change, although those winds are starting to ease back a little bit. There's actually low pressure forming in here, so that calms things down, but it does keep the rain clouds falling on the west coast, and that cold change up into Sydney, probably even getting up to Brisbane later on, with that temperature drop coming for you later on Sunday. And then we're back to sort of more westerlies and unsettled weather sticking around New Zealand next week. Nothing too serious at this stage, but likely to see another low forming in the Tasman Sea. It's a bit of a breeding ground right now for low pressure systems. That's all from me. I'll be back again tomorrow with our next update. For more information, please go to weatherwatch.co.nz or ruralweather.co.nz. We'll see you tomorrow.